My name is Lena Harris. I'm 50 years old now. I never imagined I'd be telling my story to anyone, least of all to people I don't even know. But here I am, with my hands trembling as I write these words, knowing that maybe, just maybe, someone will understand, or at least someone will listen. You see, being a mother is not a role you can easily describe. It's not a single moment, not a singular emotion you feel for a child. It's a series of decisions that, over time, chip away at you in ways you can't always explain. Each sacrifice feels small, like a grain of sand, until it all piles up and one day you realize the weight is crushing your back. I have two children, Derek and Maya. Derek is 17 and Maya just turned 14. The story I'm about to tell you is theirs too, but like all stories of love, it starts with me. For as long as I can remember, I've been a fighter. I wasn't always this way, but life has a funny way of teaching you resilience. Born and raised in Chicago, my childhood was nothing like what I had dreamed for my own kids. My mother worked two jobs, and my father was a mechanic, always away trying to make ends meet. We never had much, but there was love. Love, a few moments of peace, and when I was lucky, a hot meal. I didn't dream of becoming rich. I didn't dream of luxury. I dreamed of making sure my kids knew they were loved. I've worked at the same job for the last 15 years, cleaning at the local high school, washing floors, scrubbing the toilets, emptying trash bins. I'd get home late, tired, and sometimes all I could do was collapse into bed, my body aching from hours of labor. But I did it because I wanted them to have what I didn't: opportunity. When my husband, Richard, passed away 5 years ago, it was as if a part of me died with him. He was my best friend, my partner in every sense of the word. We weren't rich, but we were happy, or at least that's what I told myself. The kids were young then, Derek barely 12, Maya just 8. Richard was the rock that held everything together, and when he was gone, it felt like the foundation of my world crumbled. But mothers, we don't have the luxury of falling apart, not when you have kids who need you. I couldn't fall apart. I couldn't show them how broken I felt, so I put on a smile, tucked my pain deep inside, and kept going. I worked harder. I pushed myself to the limit every day to make sure they would have a future that was better than the one I had. But as much as I tried, the cracks began to show. Derek, my oldest, started pulling away. At first, it was small things. He was moody, wouldn't talk to me about his day, wouldn't help with chores, wouldn't even ask for dinner. I tried to tell myself it was just the hormones of being a teenager, but I knew it wasn't just that, it was more. Maya, on the other hand, stayed close. She'd come into my room at night just to sit with me, even if she didn't have anything to say. She would help me cook, take care of things around the house. She was always there, even when Derek started to slip away. I didn't want to admit it, but Maya was the one who made it feel like we were still a family. I'd go to work in the mornings, put on my uniform, and do the same thing day after day. It was a routine I had gotten used to. I knew it wasn't glamorous. I knew I wasn't the kind of mother who could buy her kids everything they wanted. I didn't have that kind of money, but I made sure they had what they needed. And I hoped, no, I prayed, that that would be enough. But it wasn't. One day I came home from work to find Derek standing at the kitchen table, staring at his homework with that look on his face, the one I'd seen in Richard's eyes when he was worried about something. Derek was always so confident when he was younger. He had big dreams. He was going to be a doctor, a lawyer, someone who made a difference, but now I wasn't so sure. Derek, I asked, my voice soft, trying not to sound accusatory, how was school today? He didn't even look up. His voice was flat, like he was talking through a wall. Fine. Just fine? I asked, trying to read his expression, trying to understand what was going on behind those eyes that had always been full of energy and promise. It's nothing, Mom. I'm just tired, he said, pushing his homework away. I didn't press him. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to fix him. A few weeks later, I got a call from his teacher. He was slipping in school, failing his classes, refusing to do his work. I felt a lump rise in my throat. How could this be happening? I'd given everything for him to have a better life than I did. I'd sacrificed so much, worked endless hours, all so he wouldn't have to struggle the way I did. But it wasn't just Derek's grades that worried me. It was the way he looked at me sometimes. There was something in his eyes, resentment maybe. It wasn't obvious, not at first, but it was there. I could feel it. He was pulling away, becoming someone I didn't recognize. Maya, on the other hand, still loved me without reservation. She'd come into my room at night and tell me about her day, about her friends, about everything that mattered to her. She still saw me as her hero. But Derek was slipping away. I didn't know how to fix it, and it broke my heart every day. The hardest part was realizing that, no matter how much I sacrificed, how much I worked, I couldn't make my children happy. I couldn't give them everything they needed to feel whole. I remember one night, after a particularly bad argument with Derek about his future, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself, really looking at the woman I'd become. My skin had started to show the marks of age. My hands were calloused from years of cleaning, from the wear and tear of work, from lifting weights that weren't mine to carry. But the hardest part wasn't the exhaustion. It was the emptiness in my chest, the quiet ache of knowing that I was losing my son. I didn't know what to do. All I could do was keep going. I had to, because there was nothing else. Sometimes, when the weight of it all felt too much, I'd sit outside and stare up at the stars, trying to find a way to make sense of the pain I felt. And I'd ask myself, what more can I give? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I couldn't give up. The night after my conversation with Derek, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind replaying every moment of that argument. Every word he said, every frustrated gesture seemed to echo in my head. I hadn't raised him to be like this. I hadn't worked so hard just for him to throw his future away. But that's what it felt like, wasn't it? Like he didn't care, like nothing I did mattered. I woke up the next morning with my head aching, my body drained. I had to push all the doubts and fears aside, though. I couldn't afford to fall apart, not now. I had to make breakfast, take care of the house, and somehow keep things running smoothly for Maya. I did my best to shake the darkness away, but it clung to me, making everything feel heavy. It was on that morning, when the sun barely peeked over the skyline of our modest neighborhood, that I first met Charles Montgomery. I had been doing my usual rounds at the local high school, sweeping the floors, scrubbing the counters in the cafeteria, and emptying trash cans. It was a routine I'd come to know too well, each movement mechanical, my body tired from years of bending and lifting, but my heart always full of the hope that somehow I was making things better for my kids. That morning, there was an event at the school, a gathering for some business donors. I wasn't supposed to be there, but one of the janitors had called out sick, so I picked up the slack. I didn't expect to see much, just another bunch of rich men in suits shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and talking about things I couldn't even pretend to care about. I'd seen it all before, but Charles Montgomery stood out. He wasn't like the others, not the way he carried himself. He didn't wear the kind of suit you'd find on the shelves at department stores, the kind of suit that looked like it came straight out of a magazine. This was different, tailored, sharp, and confident. His shoes were polished, but he didn't look like someone who wanted to be noticed. It was as if he walked in the room with a kind of quiet power that commanded attention. I didn't think much of it at first. I was busy sweeping the floor, focused on making sure the cafeteria was spotless. But then I heard a voice, a deep, smooth voice, call out to me. "Excuse me," he said. "Could you tell me where the restroom is?" I looked up, startled. There he was, standing a few feet away, looking at me with kind eyes. The first thing I noticed wasn't his suit or his shoes, but his eyes. They were warm, not cold like the others who'd passed through this building. I could see the concern in them, the quiet understanding. I tried not to stare, but I was so caught off guard that I couldn't help myself. I pointed toward the hallway. "Down the hall to your right." "Thanks," he said, giving me a smile that was easy, like he wasn't some high-powered businessman, but just a regular person. He didn't leave right away, though. He lingered there for a moment, watching me. It was then I realized that the only thing I had left to give to this world was my work, and even that was something I couldn't seem to escape from. The sweat, the tired muscles, the endless hours of bending over, lifting, cleaning. My hands had worn the calluses of years of hard labor, and my back ached every morning like an old machine grinding away at life. But I never stopped. I couldn't. Charles must have sensed it, because before he turned to leave, he said something that surprised me. "You know," he said, his voice low and thoughtful, "you're one of the hardest working people I've seen around here. I've watched you every day." I froze, a mop in my hand, unsure if I heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" I've seen you working these last few weeks. You've been here when everyone else left. I see you putting in hours that most people wouldn't. It takes dedication. I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Sure, I worked hard, but who noticed? Who cared? The world didn't see the sweat and tears I put into everything I did. It didn't see the way I lived on empty promises and dreams I couldn't quite catch. But here was this man, this stranger, saying something different. He wasn't just passing through, he was watching. And it felt good for just a second to be seen. I'm just doing my job, I said, almost defensively. Doing more than that, he replied with a grin. And I think people like you deserve more than just the scraps. You should have a shot at something better. That stopped me in my tracks. The rest of the conversation was a blur. He had to leave for the restroom, but he stopped to thank me again before he did, and that was the moment everything changed. He said we'd talk again soon, but I wasn't sure what he meant. And honestly, I wasn't sure I cared. At least that's what I told myself. The next day, I thought nothing of it. Another day of work. Another round of sweeping, mopping, and doing what I had to do to survive. But when I walked into the school cafeteria that morning, I was surprised to see a small envelope resting on the counter near the janitor's closet. Curious, I opened it. Inside was a note along with a business card. The note was brief, almost to the point of being impersonal. Lena, you don't know me, but I think you deserve more than what you're doing. If you're interested, I'd like to help. Let's talk. Charles Montgomery. I blinked, rereading it. My first instinct was to throw it away. I didn't need anyone's charity. I wasn't some helpless woman who needed saving. I had survived so far on my own, and I'd continue to do so. But something in that note stayed with me, gnawing at my insides. I didn't know why, but I felt like I couldn't just ignore it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the weight of it all was finally starting to get to me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was an opportunity sitting right in front of me. Maybe it wasn't the one I'd been hoping for, but it was one I couldn't just turn away from. I called the number on the business card the following week. We set up a meeting. I tried to keep my expectations low, but there was something about his voice on the phone that made me think this could be more than I expected. When I met him in person, everything felt different. He wasn't just a businessman. There was no air of superiority about him. He spoke to me like a human being, like someone who truly cared, and when he looked at me, I didn't feel like the tired woman I was. I felt like someone who still had potential, like someone who deserved a second chance. That afternoon, Charles Montgomery changed everything, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, but I knew deep down that I needed this. I needed a chance to do something more than just survive, something for me, something that didn't feel like I was just invisible in this world. In the coming days, I thought a lot about what I wanted. I didn't know if Charles had an ulterior motive or if he was just a rich man who felt sorry for me. But whatever it was, his offer had made me think. Maybe, just maybe, I had been living for everyone else for so long that I had forgotten about me. Maybe it was time for that to change. The question was, would I let it? The next few days after meeting Charles Montgomery were a blur. I spent hours replaying our conversation in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Was this really happening? A man like Charles Montgomery, someone who could probably buy this whole building and everything inside it, wanted to help me? Or was I just imagining things, too desperate to see reality? I had little time to dwell on it, though. Maya was still coming to me every evening, asking if I was okay, while Derek kept pulling further away. I could feel the divide between us growing with each passing day, but I couldn't fix it, not by myself. I wasn't even sure how to start, but something about Charles's offer kept lingering in my thoughts, tugging at me in ways I wasn't prepared for. I'd always believed that hard work was all it took to succeed, that if you put in the hours, the blood, the sweat, the tears, eventually it would pay off. But I had learned the hard way that there were only so many hours in the day, only so much of my body that I could give before it started to break down. And I knew it wasn't going to be enough for Derek and Maya, not forever. I tried to ignore the little voice in my head telling me that maybe, just maybe, I deserved more than this. That voice had always been there, quiet, almost afraid to speak up. But now it felt louder, more persistent. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called Charles the next day. His voice on the other end of the line was warm, reassuring, almost as if he had been expecting me. He didn't push me for an immediate decision. He just told me he had some ideas, some opportunities, and that we could take things slowly. Our first real conversation happened at a small, quiet cafe. I could tell that he was used to meeting in places like this, the kind of places where business deals were struck over coffee, where the air smelled of freshly baked croissants and the soft hum of whispered conversations filled the background. But for me, it felt like stepping into a different world entirely. Charles had already arrived by the time I got there. He stood up as I walked in, his broad frame towering over the table, but his smile was gentle. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Lena," he said, his voice still warm but with a note of professional respect, "it's good to see you again." I nodded, pulling my coat around me as I sat down. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to ask why he was helping me, what he wanted in return. The other part, the part that had spent years taking care of everyone else, just wanted to listen and see where this would go. We exchanged pleasantries, talked briefly about the weather, the neighborhood, the usual small talk. But I could feel the weight of the conversation looming between us, like a wall waiting to come down. Finally, Charles leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. "I know this might feel like it's coming out of nowhere, Lena," he began, "but I've been watching you for a while now. Not in a creepy way," he added with a chuckle, trying to ease the tension, "but I see something in you. You've been working here at the school for how many years now?" 15, I answered, my voice quiet but steady. 15 years, he repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "And in all that time, you've done everything you could to make ends meet. But let me ask you this, have you ever had a moment to think about what you really want? Not just for your kids, but for yourself?" I froze, my hands, which had been nervously clutching my purse, tightened. This was it, the question I had been avoiding, the one that made me feel like I was somehow betraying everything I had ever known. "I don't know," I said after a long pause. "I've never really had the time. My kids there? Everything. I've just tried to make sure they have a future. I've done what I had to." Charles nodded, his expression understanding but firm. "I get that, but Lena, listen to me. You can't keep giving everything to them without ever thinking about yourself. You're not just a mother. You're a person with your own dreams, and those dreams deserve to be nurtured, too." I felt the lump in my throat tighten, but I didn't say anything. It felt like he was peeling back layers of me I had buried so deep I had forgotten they were there. "I'm offering you an opportunity, Lena," he continued, his voice calm but insistent. "Not just a handout, but a chance to do something more with your life. There's a position available at one of the companies I'm working with. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. You could use the skills you already have, your organizational skills, your work ethic, and build something for yourself. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but slowly over time you could make something of it." I looked at him, trying to digest his words. A position, an opportunity. It all felt so foreign, so far outside the world I had built for myself and my children. But then again, hadn't I always wanted more? Hadn't I always hoped that one day things would be different? "I don't know if I can," I said quietly, my voice tinged with doubt. "It's a big change. I'm not sure I could leave everything behind. My job, my kids, everything I've worked for." Charles leaned back in his chair, studying me closely. "Lena, I'm not asking you to leave everything behind. I'm asking you to take a step forward. For yourself, for your kids. It's not about abandoning your family. It's about showing them that you can be more than just the person who cleans the floors. You deserve better than that." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he believed in me more than I believed in myself, that made me feel both uncomfortable and hopeful at the same time. "I'm not saying this will be easy," Charles said, his tone softening. "But I promise you this, if you take this step, I'll be there to support you, and when you start seeing the results, you'll know it was worth it." For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. It was a small flame, barely more than a spark, but it was there. It was enough to make me want to take a chance. Maybe I couldn't fix everything overnight. Maybe I wasn't ready to throw everything away, but I could take one step towards something different. "Okay," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. "I'll do it, I'll try." Charles smiled, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes. Not just the businessman who wanted to help a struggling woman, but someone who truly cared. Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe this was all just some charity for him. But for once, I didn't care. For once, I was going to do something for me. The decision was made. I didn't know what the future held or whether it would work out. But as I walked out of that cafe, something in me felt different. Maybe it was the weight of the possibilities ahead of me, or maybe it was just the fact that, for the first time in years, I was considering my own future, not just the futures of Derek and Maya. And that felt like a beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind. I spent the better part of my evenings after work preparing for the next chapter of my life, though I couldn't fully shake the feeling that I was stepping into unknown territory. The decision I had made to take Charles Montgomery's offer was still settling in my mind, each moment a little more surreal than the last. I hadn't even told Maya yet, though I knew I would have to soon. She would understand, I told myself. She always understood. Derek, though, I wasn't so sure. It wasn't just the job itself that had me unsettled, it was everything that came with it. The idea of stepping out of the world I had known for so long, the world of long hours at the school, the repetitive tasks that had become my life's rhythm. It had been my safe space, in a way. I knew it well. I knew how to keep the floors clean, how to make sure the trash was taken out, how to keep the building running. But this new path, it was full of questions I couldn't yet answer. I took a deep breath every morning, trying to remind myself that this wasn't just for me. This was for Maya, too, and Derek. They needed to see that change was possible, that their mother was more than just the woman who cleaned up after everyone else. I wanted them to see that I could take control of my life. I wasn't just a survivor, I could thrive. Charles called me the evening after our meeting. His voice was smooth, like it always was, but this time it was laced with something else. Urgency, maybe? Or was it excitement? I wasn't sure. Lena, he said, I'm really glad you're on board. I have something for you to start with. It's not much, but it's a start. I want you to meet with my assistant, Michelle, tomorrow morning at 9. She'll walk you through the process. It's a contract position at first, but I believe it will lead to something permanent. It's all about showing what you can do. The words felt heavy, but I didn't flinch. I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but I knew I couldn't back down now. Not after I had already taken the first step. I had to see this through. The next morning, I walked into the office building that Charles had mentioned. It was taller than anything I'd ever seen up close, gleaming glass windows reflecting the early morning sky. The lobby was all polished marble floors and sleek, modern furnishings, a stark contrast to the worn-out hallways and classrooms I was used to. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood at the entrance, unsure of what to do. I wasn't used to this world. This was not my world, but I reminded myself again, this wasn't just for me. I had to do this. The receptionist, a young woman with a kind smile, directed me to the elevator. My palms felt clammy as I pressed the button for the top floor. As the elevator ascended, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. The city, the building, the world around me, it all felt so different, so out of reach. I was just a woman from a small neighborhood, just a janitor, and now here I was, stepping into a world where I didn't belong. But wasn't that the point? To belong to a world where I could make a real difference? Michelle, Charles's assistant, was waiting for me when I stepped out of the elevator. She was in her late 20s, dressed in a crisp suit, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She stood up when she saw me, her smile professional but warm. Lena, it's so good to meet you, she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. Charles has spoken highly of you. I'm excited to see what you can bring to the table. I smiled back, trying to hide the nervousness I felt. Thank you, I'm ready to start. Michelle led me to a small conference room where she had a few papers laid out for me. She started explaining the details of the position, a project management assistant role. At first, the term seemed simple enough, but the more she spoke, the more my head began to spin. There were terms I didn't understand, jargon I wasn't familiar with, and expectations I didn't know if I could meet. I know this might feel like a lot, Michelle said, noticing my hesitance. But you've already shown us that you have the kind of drive and dedication we need. The skills you have, organization, time management, attention to detail, those are the things that will set you apart here. It's not about the title, Lena. It's about the work you put in and how you apply yourself. I nodded, trying to keep up. The words sounded nice, but there was something in my gut that still churned with uncertainty. Could I really do this? Could I really change my life and by extension, my family's life? Could I prove to myself that I was more than just the woman who had cleaned up after everyone else for so many years? That evening, I sat down with Maya. She was the first person I wanted to share this with. I knew she'd be proud of me, even though I was still unsure about whether or not I was making the right choice. Mama, are you okay? She asked, concern in her voice as she saw the look on my face. I took a deep breath. Maya, I've been given an opportunity, I began slowly. Charles Montgomery, remember I told you about him? Well, he offered me a job, not cleaning, a real job. Her eyes lit up, a spark of excitement flashing across her face. You mean like a real office job? A job where you don't have to scrub toilets anymore? I smiled, the warmth in her words making me feel a little lighter. Yes, exactly. I'll be helping with projects, organizing things, making sure everything runs smoothly. It's a step up, Maya, and I need to take it. She hugged me tightly, her arms wrapping around my waist. I'm so proud of you, Mama. I know you can do this. That was the moment when I realized that this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about them, too. About showing them that no matter how hard life got, no matter how difficult the road ahead, you could always choose to take a new path. And maybe, just maybe, that path would lead to something better. The next few weeks were a blur of new beginnings and lessons. Every morning I got up earlier than usual, pulling myself together for the day ahead, not knowing exactly what would come next, but determined to give it my all. I started to feel the weight of the change, though. Derek didn't say much, but I could see the disapproval in his eyes when he found out. You're going to leave us for that job? He'd mutter, his voice cold. What about us? What about the way we used to be? I didn't have the answers. All I could do was show them, that this was not just for me, but for all of us. I needed them to see that I wasn't abandoning them. I was just trying to find a way to give them something better. And as I sat in meetings, went over spreadsheets, and helped organize projects that felt way outside of my comfort zone, I couldn't help but wonder, was I doing the right thing? Could I make this work? Could I become the woman I needed to be, not just for my children, but for myself? One evening, Charles called again, his voice always calm and reassuring. You're doing great, Lena, he said. I'm seeing some real progress. Keep it up. It was small words, but they meant everything to me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. The road ahead was long, and I wasn't sure if I would make it to the end. But I had started, and that was enough for now. The weeks following my decision to take the job felt like a roller coaster I hadn't signed up for. Some days, I woke up with a sense of purpose, ready to take on whatever came my way. Other days, I struggled to push myself out of bed, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The new role at Charles's company was demanding. I'd never worked in a professional environment like this before. I was used to scrubbing floors and sweeping hallways, not managing projects or sorting through spreadsheets. Every day felt like a test, and most days I wasn't sure I was passing. But despite the doubt that weighed on me, I kept going. I told myself it was for Maya, for Derek, for us. I couldn't let them down, and I certainly couldn't let myself fall back into the life of just surviving. I hadn't told Derek yet about the frustrations I was feeling, how every email seemed like a hurdle I couldn't clear, how every conversation with Michelle, Charles's assistant, left me second-guessing my abilities. He didn't understand. I knew he didn't. He still didn't see why I had to change things. Mom, Derek said one evening after dinner, his voice clipped. You've been spending all your time at that office. You're barely even here anymore. What's going on? I looked up from the dishes I was cleaning, my hands still wet from scrubbing the last pot. The conversation felt familiar, and yet so different. He had always been the kid who was quiet, distant at times, but never openly confrontational. But now it felt like he was challenging me. I'm doing something for myself, Derek, I replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Something I can be proud of. It's not just about me, though, it's about us. I'm trying to make things better for all of us. You, me, Maya. He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. Better. How's this better? You're never home. You're always at that office now, working with people who don't care about you. I could feel the tension in the room, the space between us growing wider with every word. He didn't get it. He couldn't, and that hurt more than I was willing to admit. I care about you, Derek, I said quietly, trying to soften the blow. But I can't keep giving everything to you without anything for myself. I've spent my whole life working for others. Now, I want to do something for me. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say something else. But instead, he just shook his head, muttering under his breath. Whatever, Mom, do what you want. I spent the next few hours cleaning the kitchen in silence, Derek's words still echoing in my head. I didn't want to admit it, but the weight of his disappointment hurt, more than I wanted to let on. I told myself that I was doing the right thing. I had to keep telling myself that. If I didn't, I would lose myself. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was losing him. The next day, I met with Michelle again at the office. She was as cheerful as ever, walking me through the new project, going over the timelines, and showing me where I fit in. I was trying to keep up, but my mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Derek. How had we gone from being so close to this? How had my son, my firstborn, the one who used to look up to me with such admiration, become this distant stranger? Lena? Michelle's voice cut through my thoughts. Are you with me? I blinked, snapping out of my reverie. Sorry, Michelle, just a lot on my mind. She looked at me with concern, her eyes softening. I get it, but don't let the pressure get to you. You're doing well, really well. Charles is happy with your progress. I nodded, but inside, the doubts kept creeping in. I wasn't sure I was doing well at all. Every task, every meeting felt like a hurdle I wasn't sure I could clear. And even if I could, I was terrified that Derek's words would be right, that I was abandoning my family for something that wasn't even worth it. Later that night, after a long day at the office, I went home to find Maya sitting at the kitchen table, doing her homework. She was always so diligent, always the one who tried to keep things together when everything felt like it was falling apart. Maya, I said softly, taking a seat next to her. How was your day? She looked up, her eyes bright. Good, just the usual. How was yours? I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. It was hard today. She set her pencil down, her brow furrowing with concern. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, my hands clasped together in my lap. I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, Maya. This job, it's more than I expected. I thought it would be an opportunity, but now I'm not so sure. Derek, he's not happy about it. And I feel like I'm losing him. Maya reached over, placing her hand on mine. You're not losing him, Mom. He's just confused. He doesn't know what you're doing, and I think he's scared. I don't think he means to hurt you. He just misses you. Her words felt like a balm to my soul, soothing the jagged edges of my doubt. I just want him to understand. I want him to see that I'm doing this for all of us, but I don't think he does, not yet. Maya squeezed my hand. He will, Mom. Just give him time. You've been his whole world for so long. It's hard for him to see things any other way. But I think, deep down, he knows what you're doing is important. He just doesn't know how to say it. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right. Derek was hurting, too, in his own way. And maybe, just maybe, if I could just keep going, keep showing him that this wasn't about abandoning him, but about building something better for all of us. Then maybe, eventually, he would understand. I wasn't sure if I could do this. Some days, it felt like everything was falling apart. The office, the tension with Derek, the endless balancing act of being a mother and trying to carve out a space for myself. But then I would look at Maya, at her unwavering belief in me, and I would find a small piece of strength I didn't know I had. And so I kept moving forward one step at a time. Each email I sent, each meeting I attended, each project I helped organize was a small victory. It wasn't easy. It was far from it, but it was progress. And that was enough for now. I wasn't just cleaning up after everyone anymore. I was building something for myself, for Maya, for Derek, even if he didn't see it yet. And that was a start. The days had begun to blend together, a mixture of meetings, late nights at the office, and quiet mornings before the kids woke up. Every day felt like a battle, each step forward heavy with doubt, but somehow I kept pushing through. I couldn't stop, not when I was so close to something better. But every night, after a long day of work, I would find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake. The tension between Derek and me continued to grow, an unspoken distance that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. He didn't say much anymore. The sarcastic comments had stopped, but the silence between us felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I could feel the weight of that silence in the air when I walked into the house after work. The way he wouldn't look me in the eye, The way he'd turn his music up just a little louder when I came in, like he was blocking me out. I didn't know how to fix it. I wanted to talk to him, but every time I tried, it felt like I was walking on fragile ground. If I said the wrong thing, would I push him even further away? That night after dinner, I sat at the kitchen table, watching Derek as he quickly shoved his plate into the sink and grabbed his backpack. His movements were quick, almost as if he couldn't wait to escape. "Derek," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of the conversation I knew was coming, "can we talk?" He didn't even turn around. "Not now, Mom. I've got homework." I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't been home much lately, I knew that. I'd been so focused on this new job, on proving that I could make something more of myself, but I didn't realize how much it was costing me, how much I was losing along the way. "I don't think you understand how hard this is for me," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "I'm doing this because I want a better future for all of us. I'm not just working for me, Derek. I'm working for you, for Maya. I need you to see that." He turned then, but his eyes weren't angry. They were tired, hollow. "You think I don't see it, Mom? You think I don't know what you're doing? You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you want to feel important. You want to feel like you matter. But what about me? What about Maya? What about us?" I froze, the words slicing through me like glass. "I'm doing this for you, Derek," I repeated, but it felt weaker this time. "I swear I am. I just want something more for all of us." He shook his head, his jaw clenched. "I don't want your more, Mom. I want you. I want my mom back. Not some woman who's too busy with meetings and office projects to even talk to me anymore." His words hit me like a slap. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I wasn't abandoning him, that I loved him more than anything, but I couldn't find the words. I just stood there, staring at him, my heart breaking in two. The next morning, I found myself sitting in the car outside the office, staring at the building in front of me. The weight of what Derek had said hung heavily around me, pulling at my insides. Was this worth it? Was this job, this chance to build something more, really worth the cost of my relationship with my son? I had thought that by getting this job, by showing my kids that I could do more than just clean, I'd be setting a better example. I'd be showing them that it was possible to have more. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that the most important thing I could give them was my time, my attention, my love. I hadn't meant to neglect them, but in the process of trying to build something new, I had lost sight of what truly mattered. I had been so focused on what I was trying to create that I didn't see the cracks that were starting to form in my family. When I got home that night, Derek was already in his room. I could hear the music playing softly through the door, but he didn't come out. Maya was sitting at the kitchen table, her homework spread out in front of her. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes softening as she saw the look on my face. "Maya," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I think I've made a mistake. I've been so focused on this job, on trying to change things, that I've lost touch with what really matters. I've been so busy chasing something bigger that I forgot what's right in front of me." She closed her book, pushing it aside. "Mom, you're trying to make things better. I get that. But you have to remember Derek and I are here too. We're not going to be okay just because you've got a new job or more money. We need you too." Her words struck me like lightning. I hadn't realized how much I had taken her and Derek for granted. I hadn't realized how much they had been struggling, silently waiting for me to notice. I had been so focused on myself, on proving I could make something of my life, that I had forgotten that family was about more than just providing. It was about being there. I sat down next to her at the table, my hands trembling. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I never meant to make you feel like you weren't enough. I thought I was doing what was best for us, but I've been so lost in trying to change things that I didn't stop to see what I was losing." She took my hand, squeezing it gently. "It's okay, Mom. We just need you. We need you here with us." And in that moment, I realized something. I had been so wrapped up in proving something to the world, to Charles, to myself, that I had forgotten who I was really doing this for. I wasn't just building a future for Maya and Derek. I was building a relationship with them, a connection that had to come first. The next few days were hard. I knew I had to make some changes. I couldn't keep pushing so hard at work if it meant pushing away the people I loved most. I had to find a balance. I had to be a mother first and foremost before I could be anything else. When I spoke to Charles the next day, he could tell something was off. Lena, is everything okay? You seem distant. I took a deep breath, the weight of everything I was carrying pressing down on me. Charles, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I've realized that I've been so focused on this job, on climbing up, that I've lost sight of what matters. I need to take a step back. I'm going to focus on my family for a while. I hope you understand. There was a brief silence on the other end of the phone, and then he spoke, his voice calm and understanding. I get it, Lena. Family comes first. You know I'm here if you ever want to continue, but take your time. Take care of yourself and your family. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I wasn't failing. I wasn't giving up. I was choosing what mattered most. The next evening, Derek and I finally sat down and talked. Really talked. We didn't solve everything in one conversation, but I could see the walls coming down between us. Slowly, things started to change. It wouldn't be easy, I knew that. But the first step, the most important one, was realizing that I had to be there. I had to be present. I was no longer just a woman chasing a dream of success. I was a mother who was learning, every day, to balance her dreams with the needs of her family. And that was a start. It had been a week since I decided to take a step back from my role at Charles's company. I hadn't quit completely, but I had made it clear that my family had to come first. The office calls, the long meetings, the endless emails, it all still loomed in the background, but I wasn't going to let it take over again. Not at the expense of my relationship with Derek, with Maya. The first few days were a little awkward, a lot like trying to find your footing after you've been stumbling for too long. Derek and I barely spoke at first, but the silence between us was no longer angry. It was uncertain, like we were both figuring out how to navigate this new space between us. Maya, on the other hand, seemed to sense the change before I even did. She had been quietly watching me, as she always did, but now there was something different in her eyes. "You've been around more, Mom," she said one evening as we sat down for dinner, her voice almost shy, like she didn't want to draw attention to the changes. "I know," I said, taking a deep breath, "and I'm sorry for not being here before. I got caught up in things that weren't as important as being with you guys. I've been trying to make up for it, but I know it's going to take time." She smiled at me, a soft, understanding smile. "It's okay, we're glad you're here." But I could tell Derek was still uncertain. Every time I tried to engage with him, he would give me short answers and retreat into his room, headphones on, his world closed off. The distance between us hadn't completely closed, but there was something in his eyes now. Maybe hope, maybe fear, I wasn't sure, but I knew he was still hurting. The following week, I took a trip to the school for a parent-teacher conference. I wasn't sure what I expected to hear, but I was trying to make up for my absence, trying to show Derek that I was still invested in his future, in him. The teacher, Mrs. Harper, was kind but firm as she gave me an update on Derek's progress. "He's a bright student, Lena," she said, glancing at her notes. "But he's been struggling a lot with his work recently. He's distracted. His grades are slipping, and while he's capable of so much more, he seems to be holding back. It's like he's shutting down." Shutting down, the words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Had I caused this? Had my absence, my focus on everything but him, made him feel like he couldn't talk to me? I should have seen this sooner. I should have known. "I'll talk to him," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I've been trying to find a balance between work and family, but I'm not sure I'm doing a good job of it. I'll make sure we address this." Mrs. Harper nodded, giving me a soft, empathetic smile. "I think he just needs to know that he's not alone and that you're there for him, that's all." That evening after dinner, I found Derek sitting on his bed, scrolling through his phone. I hesitated at his door, unsure of how to approach him, but I had to try. I couldn't let this continue. "Derek," I said softly, stepping into his room. He didn't look up, but I could feel the tension in the air. He knew this was coming. "I talked to your teacher today," I continued, sitting at the edge of his bed. "She said you're not doing as well as you should be, and I know you're struggling with a lot right now. But I want you to know something. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and we'll figure this out together." There was a long pause before he finally spoke, his voice quiet. "You don't get it, Mom. You've been gone, you've been working all the time, and you never have time for me. I don't even know what to do anymore. I can't do this on my own." My heart broke. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him everything would be okay, that we would work through this, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what he needed from me. I'm sorry, Derek. I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I've been so focused on everything else that I forgot to focus on you. I know I've hurt you. I'm sorry. For the first time in what felt like ages, he looked up at me. His eyes were still full of hurt, but there was a flicker of something else, something softer, something I hadn't seen in weeks. It's not just about you working, Mom. It's about me feeling like I'm not enough, like I don't matter, he said, his voice breaking a little. And I need you, you know? I don't know how to do this without you. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't have all the answers. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't have to be perfect. I just needed to show up, to be there for him, for Maya, for myself. I reached out, pulling him into a hug. It wasn't the kind of hug I had imagined in my dreams. It wasn't filled with easy forgiveness or instant solutions. But it was a start. I'm here, Derek, and I'm not going anywhere, I whispered into his hair. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to do this alone. The following days felt like a slow rebuilding process. Derek and I talked more about school, about his dreams, about his fears. It wasn't easy and it wasn't perfect, but we were taking the first steps back toward each other. And that at least felt like progress. Maya, too, seemed to sense the shift. She'd always been the peacemaker, the glue that held us together when things got rough, and I could see that her small, hopeful gestures, making sure I took breaks, bringing me tea, sitting with me after long days, were her way of showing that she was there, rooting for all of us. But even with all of this progress, I knew I wasn't done yet. I knew that rebuilding wasn't a one-time thing. It was a process, one that took time, patience, and a lot of love. And maybe, just maybe, we were all learning how to love ourselves and each other a little more each day. I sat at the kitchen table one night, going over some bills and trying to make sense of my finances when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from Charles. Lena, I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I hope things are going well. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at the message for a long time. For a moment, I considered reaching out to him again, maybe even asking for more help. But then I thought about how far I'd come on my own, how much I had grown since that first meeting in the cafe. I didn't need to depend on someone else to find my way. I could do this. We could do this. I replied, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard before I finally typed. Thank you, Charles. I'm doing well. I'm focusing on my family now. I appreciate everything you've done, but for now, I think I need to handle things on my own. I hit send, and as I placed the phone down, a wave of peace washed over me. I had made the choice to prioritize what mattered most: my family, my relationship with Derek and Maya, and my own journey to rebuild the connection that had been strained for so long. I didn't need anyone else's validation to know I was on the right path. It wasn't going to be easy. There were still a lot of struggles ahead. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. I was taking control again of my life, my choices, and the future I was building for my family. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The air had changed in the house. It wasn't just the quiet resolution between Derek and me, or the softer smiles Maya gave me when she thought I wasn't looking. It was the way the house seemed to breathe differently now, like the walls had exhaled, letting in the light that had been stifled for so long. Mornings weren't perfect. I still woke up earlier than I wanted to, still felt the weight of the day's responsibilities piling on my shoulders before I even left for work. But something was different. I had made the conscious decision to show up for my family, to be there for them when they needed me, not just when I had time left over after everything else. And that shift in my priorities, however small, began to make a difference in ways I didn't expect. It had been 2 weeks since Derek and I had our heart-to-heart, and I was beginning to see the change in him. He was still quiet, but now, when I asked him about his day, he actually answered. He'd let me into his world little by little, and though the conversation still felt like a foreign language sometimes, I could feel the trust starting to rebuild between us. Maya was doing well, too. She'd always been the glue that kept us together, and now, with Derek opening up more, it felt like we were all starting to fit together again. Her smile seemed a little brighter, her laughter a little easier. She'd started leaving little notes for me around the house, reminders of how much she cared, even in the smallest ways. One morning, I found one stuck to the coffee machine, written in her familiar loopy handwriting. "You're doing great, Mom. I'm proud of you." I stood there for a moment, my hand frozen on the coffee pot, the weight of her words settling on me. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. I hadn't realized how much I had been silently waiting for some sign that my efforts weren't going unnoticed. Work, too, had settled into a new rhythm. I had cut back on the hours I was spending in the office, only attending the meetings that required my input and leaving the rest to Michelle, who was more than capable of handling the day-to-day tasks. There were moments when I felt the pull to dive back in, to prove myself, to show that I could handle it all. But each time, I stopped myself. I reminded myself that my worth wasn't tied to the amount of work I did, but to the way I was present for the people I loved. I'd get home earlier now, more often than not, with enough time to help Maya with her homework, or even sit down with Derek and watch a show we both liked. Those small moments, ones I used to take for granted, felt like victories. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when I felt torn between the woman I wanted to be for myself and the woman I needed to be for them. But I was finding my balance. It was a delicate thing, like trying to hold water in cupped hands without spilling any, but I was learning. One evening after dinner, I found myself alone in the kitchen, washing dishes while the house fell into the quiet hum of nighttime. Maya had gone to bed, and Derek had retreated to his room, probably lost in whatever game he was playing on his console. The house felt still, peaceful, but there was something else, something deeper in the silence. I could hear Derek's faint music from his room, the beat thumping softly through the walls. It used to bother me, that music, when I couldn't get him to talk to me. But tonight it was different. Tonight it felt like background noise to something more meaningful, something that was beginning to stitch us back together. Then the sound of footsteps startled me from my thoughts. I turned to find Derek standing in the doorway of the kitchen, looking hesitant. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Hey," I replied, wiping my hands on the dish towel. "What's up?" He hesitated again, like he wasn't sure how to say what he wanted to. I wanted to say something about, before. I felt my heart tighten in my chest. Was he about to pull away again? Was all the progress we'd made about to unravel? He walked over, leaning against the counter across from me. "I know I've been hard on you, Mom, and I shouldn't have said all that stuff. You were just trying to make things better for us. I was just pissed that I didn't get it sooner." I looked at him, unsure if I had heard him right. "Derek, you don't have to apologize. I'm sorry too. I know I wasn't there when you needed me, and I know that hurt you." He shook his head. "No, it's just I get it now. You're not leaving us, you're just trying to build something, right?" I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. "Yeah, I am. But I want to make sure I'm here for you too, Derek. I don't want you to feel like you're second to anything else." He was quiet for a moment, and then a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I think I'm starting to get it too." That night, after I finished the dishes and checked on Maya, I sat down on the couch. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that meant peace, not tension. I thought about the journey I had been on, how lost I had felt, how much I had wanted to prove something to myself and to the world. I thought about the choices I had made, the sacrifices I'd made, and the ways in which I had lost myself along the way. But most of all, I thought about how far I had come. I wasn't perfect. I hadn't figured it all out, but I was trying. I was showing up, and that was enough. The next morning, I was up before anyone else, as usual. I made my coffee, taking a moment to savor the warmth of the cup in my hands. It felt good to have a moment of peace before the day began. As I stood at the window, looking out at the neighborhood still shrouded in early morning fog, I realized something. I had spent so long chasing a future that I thought would make everything better, but what I was building now, the quiet, messy, imperfect family life I was slowly stitching back together, was better than anything I could have imagined. I wasn't doing this alone anymore, and I didn't have to. By the time I got to work that day, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I wasn't completely free of doubt or fear, but I knew that I had made the right decision in choosing to be present for my family. I had made a commitment to be the best mother I could be, and I knew I couldn't do that without being honest with myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. Not just for me, but for all of us. When I walked into the office that morning, Michelle was waiting for me, a cup of coffee in her hand. "Lena," she said, smiling brightly. I've been meaning to talk to you. Charles wants to meet with you next week. He's been really impressed with your progress, and I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Michelle, I said, smiling, I appreciate everything Charles has done for me, but I'm not sure I'm ready to jump back into it just yet. I need to take a step back. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded. I understand. You've done a lot, Lena. And we're always here if you want to come back. You're part of the team, whether you're working or not. I smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude flood through me. Thank you, Michelle. But for now, I'm going to focus on what matters most. And with that, I knew that I was finally where I was supposed to be. As the weeks passed, the rhythm of our home continued to change, a slow dance between the new version of myself and the version I had been before. The version that was always rushing, always scrambling to find time for everything. But now, with each passing day, I felt the balance I had been desperately searching for start to settle into place. Derek was speaking to me more, his walls slowly coming down with each conversation. I wasn't expecting miracles overnight, but the fact that he had started sharing parts of his day with me, even the small, seemingly insignificant things, made me feel like we were reconnecting. He would sit at the kitchen table after school, telling me about his day, sometimes complaining about his friends, other times sharing moments of victory over a video game. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a start. Maya had always been the emotional backbone of our little family, but even she seemed to be thriving in this newfound stability. Her schoolwork improved, her smile came more easily, and the hugs she gave me at the end of each day were tighter, filled with a kind of comfort I hadn't realized we both needed. One afternoon, I walked into the house to find Maya sitting on the couch, flipping through a photo album. She had an almost wistful look on her face, the kind of look someone gets when they're reminiscing about a time that felt both distant and close. I sat down beside her, the familiar scent of her shampoo filling the air. "What are you looking at?" I asked softly. She closed the album and smiled at me, her voice carrying a mixture of nostalgia and tenderness. "Just some old pictures from when things were easier." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. The truth was, I missed those days too. The days when we were a family, a unit that worked like clockwork, but things had shifted. And while I missed the simplicity of those moments, I knew I couldn't go back. "You know, Mom," Maya continued, "you've changed. I can feel it. I don't know if you realize it, but you've really been there for us, like really here. And I can tell Derek feels it too. He's not as angry as he was." I smiled, her words a balm to my weary soul. "I'm trying, Maya. I'm trying to be present, and I'm trying to make up for the time I've lost." "You don't have to make up for anything," she said, her eyes wide and sincere. "We're here, and we're happy you're here too." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I held them back. It wasn't the time for that, not yet. I had come a long way, but there were still miles to go. Still lessons to learn, both as a mother and as a woman trying to find her own path in a world that demanded so much of her. That night, Derek surprised me. We had always had dinner together, but tonight felt different. He set the table without me asking, placed the napkins neatly on the chairs, and even put the music on, something other than the usual loud, bass-heavy beats I had grown used to. I raised an eyebrow as I walked into the kitchen. "What's all this about?" I asked, feeling a little thrown off by the sudden change. Derek, looking more grown up than he ever had, shrugged but couldn't quite hide the smile on his face. "Just thought you might like a nice dinner for once." I laughed, shaking my head. "Well, I'm not going to argue with that. Thanks, Derek, you're being different." "Maybe I am," he said, his tone softening. "You've been different too, Mom. You're actually here, and I don't know how to explain it, but I guess it feels like we're getting somewhere." I don't know what else to say. "Maybe you don't have to say anything, Derek," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm just happy to be here, with you, with Maya." For a few moments, we just stood there, the weight of everything settling around us like a gentle rain. I wasn't sure if Derek fully understood what I was feeling, but in that moment, I didn't need him to. He had opened up, and that was enough for me. We sat down to eat, the conversation light and easy. Derek wasn't as angry anymore, and though he still had his teenage moments of grumpiness, there was a warmth between us that hadn't been there for a long time. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I felt a pull to something I hadn't thought about in ages: the farm. It was the place that had been the backdrop of so many of my childhood memories, where I had grown up, where my family had worked hard and made sacrifices. The thought of returning there had always felt too painful, a reminder of how far I had come, of the things I had left behind. But now, with everything that had happened, I felt an odd sort of clarity. Maybe going back there wasn't just about revisiting the past. Maybe it was about finding a way to honor it. I mentioned the idea to Maya that morning. "What do you think about going to the farm for a weekend?" I asked, watching her eyes light up. "I know it's been a while, but I think it might be good for all of us to go back, to remember where we came from." Maya's face lit up. "I think that would be amazing, Mom. I've heard so many stories about the farm, but I've never really seen it. I want to go." And just like that, the plan was set in motion. The idea of going back to the farm, to the place that had once felt like everything I had lost, now felt like a chance for us to reconnect with our roots, literally and figuratively. That weekend, we packed up the car and made the drive to the farm. The closer we got, the more memories flooded my mind. The scent of fresh earth, the sound of the wind through the trees, the sight of the old barn where I had spent countless hours as a child. When we finally arrived, I took a deep breath. The place had changed, of course. The barn was older now, its wood creaking with age. The house was smaller than I remembered, and the garden where I had once spent hours planting and weeding was now overgrown with weeds. But even so, it felt like home. Derek and Maya looked around, wide-eyed at the open space and the quiet, peaceful surroundings. They could see it now, the life I had come from, the place that had shaped me, even if I had left it behind long ago. "This place is nice," Derek said, his voice quiet as he looked out over the fields. "I can see why you loved it here." I smiled, my heart swelling. "It's where everything started, where I learned how to work hard, how to sacrifice. I want you both to understand that too." We spent the weekend exploring the farm, cleaning up the garden, and reconnecting with a piece of my past that had always felt distant. It was hard work, but it felt right. It felt like we were rebuilding something, not just physically, but emotionally. The farm wasn't just a place. It was a reminder of who I was, who we were, and where we had come from. As we drove back home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was missing. The pieces of my life were still scattered, but for the first time in a long time, they were starting to fit together. Slowly but surely, I was finding my way back, not just to who I had been, but to who I was meant to be. And as the sun set over the horizon, I felt a quiet optimism settle in my heart. We were on the right path, all of us. The drive home from the farm was peaceful, and the silence that hung in the car was comfortable for once. Derek and Maya sat quietly in the back seat, both staring out of their windows, lost in their own thoughts while I drove, my hand steady on the wheel but my mind racing. The farm had changed in ways that mirrored my own life. Things had worn down, grown quiet, and some parts of it had been left behind. But there was also something about it that felt rooted, something enduring in its simplicity. I didn't realize how much I had needed to reconnect with that part of myself until I had stood in the garden, pulling weeds with my children beside me. It felt like all the years of running and trying to build something, to prove something, had finally given way to this quiet, almost sacred moment of togetherness. We didn't speak much on the drive back. When we finally pulled into the driveway of our house, Derek was the first to jump out of the car, his eyes wide as he walked toward the front door. Maya followed behind, and for a moment I just stood there looking at the house. It had always felt like home, but something had shifted in me on that trip, something deep and unspoken. The trip to the farm hadn't just been about returning to the past. It had been about moving forward, a symbol that despite the mess and the struggles, there was always a way to reconnect, to rebuild. In the days that followed, I felt a new energy in the house. It was subtle, but it was there. Derek and Maya spent more time together, laughing, playing games, talking about their plans for the future. Maya had started asking more about my childhood, the way I had grown up, the things that had shaped me into who I was. For the first time in a long while, I felt like the woman I had always been deep down was finally coming back into focus. Derek, too, had started to open up more. He was still quiet, still guarded, but the distance between us had shrunk. I could feel the small moments of connection growing between us, whether it was him asking about dinner or letting me join him in his favorite game. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And then, one evening, as I was preparing dinner, Derek came into the kitchen. He looked hesitant, like he had something to say but wasn't sure how to say it. Mom, he started, shifting from foot to foot. I wanted to tell you something. I wiped my hands on the dish towel and turned to face him. What's up? He hesitated again before speaking, his words slow but deliberate. I know I've been tough on you. I've been acting like I don't care, but the truth is, I was just scared. I was scared that if you kept going, you'd forget about me, about us. But, I get it now. I see what you're trying to do. I see that you're still here, that you're still my mom. My chest tightened and I had to swallow hard. I hadn't expected this. I had been so caught up in rebuilding our relationship that I hadn't realized how much Derek had been holding inside. I took a deep breath before responding, my voice steady but full of emotion. I'm sorry, Derek. I've been so focused on trying to make things better, trying to make sure we have a future, that I didn't realize you needed me here. But I'm here now. I'll always be here. He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Yeah, I know. And I'm sorry too. That night, as we sat around the dinner table together, the warmth in the room felt different. There was an ease between us that hadn't been there before. Derek joked around with Maya, and I joined in, laughing with them. It wasn't just the meal we shared, it was the moments we had rediscovered together, the small but significant shifts in our family dynamic. Later that evening, after dinner, we all settled into the living room. Maya sat on the couch, flipping through a magazine, while Derek played a game on his phone. I sat in my usual spot, just observing them. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe, to let go of the worries that had consumed me for so long. I realized that the true work was never about changing everything overnight. It was about being present, about showing up, no matter how imperfectly. The following week, I sat down to talk with Michelle at the office. I had been avoiding it for a while, unsure of where I stood with the company, but I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. The truth was, I had missed the work, the challenge, the feeling of accomplishment, but I also knew that I couldn't dive back in the way I had before. I had to find a balance. Lena, Michelle said, giving me a knowing look when I sat down at her desk, I know you've been thinking a lot about this, about where you want to go next, and I get it. You've got a lot on your plate, but I think you're ready. I think you've got what it takes to move forward with the team. I nodded, grateful for her support, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to take the plunge again. Michelle, I appreciate everything, really, but I think I need to focus on my family right now. I've learned that there's more to life than just the hustle. I need to take a step back, just for a while. Her smile was kind. You don't have to make any big decisions right away, Lena. I just want you to know that whenever you're ready, we're here for you. And don't feel pressured to be everything at once. You've already accomplished so much. Her words sank in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with my decision. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. The work I had done, the way I had tried to build something more for my family, wasn't measured by hours worked or titles earned. It was measured in moments like this, sitting with Derek and Maya, knowing we were on our way back to each other. A few days later, I found myself standing at the edge of the farm again, looking out at the fields. I hadn't realized how much I had missed this place until now. It wasn't just a piece of land, it was a part of me, a piece of my past that I had left behind in search of something else. But what I had learned on this journey, what I had come to realize over these past few months, was that I didn't have to leave the past behind. I could carry it with me. I could use it to build the future I wanted, the future I could share with Derek and Maya. We had a long way to go, but I knew this, we were headed in the right direction, together. As I walked back to the car, the sun beginning to set behind the trees, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't just a mother trying to make it all work. I was a woman, a daughter, a sister, someone who had found her way back to the things that truly mattered, and that was enough for now. I wasn't perfect. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was right where I was meant to be, and that was a beginning. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling, like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Our home was still filled with the usual chaos, laundry piled high, the hum of the dishwasher in the background, the faint sound of Derek's music echoing from his room. But there was something different now, something quieter, something more settled, and in that stillness I found a strange comfort. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running on empty. I wasn't juggling a million tasks in my mind, racing from one thing to the next. Instead, I was learning to be present, to appreciate the small, everyday moments, the ones that for so long I had brushed aside in favor of the bigger, more urgent things. One Saturday morning, after a long week of work, Derek and Maya came to me with an idea. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in my hands, when Derek walked in, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. "Mama," he said, his voice still that mix of reluctant teenager and someone who was maybe, just maybe, trying to make an effort. "We were thinking it might be fun to do something different today. Maybe we could all go out to the lake. I heard there's a good spot where we can have a picnic and swim." Maya, sitting beside him, nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, Mom, it would be fun. Like we used to do, just the three of us. No work, no distractions. Just us." The simplicity of the idea hit me harder than I expected. For so long, we had been caught in the cycle of trying to make everything better, trying to fix everything that felt broken. But here they were, offering me something I had almost forgotten how to enjoy, just being with them. Not as a mother trying to prove something, not as a worker trying to juggle every responsibility, but simply as a family. "Okay," I said, setting my coffee cup down with a smile. "Let's do it." The drive to the lake was quiet, the sound of the tires on the road almost hypnotic as the car hummed along. Derek sat in the front, his music off for once, while Maya and I chatted quietly in the back. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden light over everything, and I could feel the tension in my body slowly easing away as the miles passed. The further we drove, the more the weight of the last few months seemed to lift. When we finally reached the lake, the place was as beautiful as I remembered. The water sparkled in the sunlight, the trees surrounding the shore casting long shadows on the ground. It was a place I had visited so many times as a child, a place where I had once felt the joy of simple things, just being near family, breathing in the fresh air, and letting go of everything that weighed on me. We spread out a blanket near the edge of the water, unpacking sandwiches and snacks as we sat together, the cool breeze ruffling our hair. For a while, we didn't talk much. We just sat there, eating, watching the waves, and listening to the world around us. There was something peaceful about it, the kind of peace that wasn't rushed, wasn't fleeting. "I used to come here with Dad," Maya said quietly, breaking the silence. "We'd have picnics like this when I was little." I felt a pang in my chest at the mention of Charles, the father I had lost, but I also felt a warmth. I didn't have to hold on to that past with bitterness anymore. There were still pieces of him in my heart, in the stories Maya shared, in the memories we had as a family. "I remember those days," I said softly. "They were the simple ones, weren't they?" Maya nodded, her gaze fixed on the water. "Yeah, they were." The rest of the afternoon passed slowly, the way good days tend to do when you're not looking at the clock. We swam, we played in the sand, and we talked about things that mattered and things that didn't. Derek shared a few stories about his friends at school. Maya talked about a new book she was reading, and I even told them a few funny stories from when I was their age. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some grand, transformative moment. But in those quiet, unspoken moments, I realized something important. It wasn't about fixing everything. It wasn't about being the perfect mother, the perfect worker, the perfect everything. It was about showing up, being there, in the small moments that made up our lives. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange, we packed up our things and made our way back to the car. The day had been simple, but it had been enough. The drive home was filled with the soft hum of the tires again, but this time it felt different. There was an ease in the air, a quiet understanding between us. I wasn't trying to hold it all together anymore. I wasn't pushing for some unattainable version of perfection. I was learning, more and more each day, that being present, truly present, was all that mattered. When we got back home, we carried our things inside in comfortable silence. Derek helped me with the bags, his gestures a little less reluctant than they had been before. Maya was humming a song, and I found myself smiling at the simplicity of it all. We settled in for the night, and as I stood in the kitchen, preparing for the next day, I paused for a moment. I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know if there would be more challenges or more hard choices to make. But for the first time in a long time, I felt confident that we could face it all together. I had spent so long thinking that I needed to create something extraordinary to make up for everything I felt I had lost. But what I had come to realize was that the extraordinary was already here. It was in the quiet moments with Derek and Maya. It was in the ordinary, the everyday, the moments when we simply chose to be together. I wasn't the same woman I had been when this journey started. I was different now. Not just a mother, not just a worker, but someone who had learned to slow down and appreciate the simple things. And that was enough. That was everything. That night, after the kids were in bed, I stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the quiet street. The stars were clear, and the night air was still. There was peace in the world now, peace in my heart. I didn't have to be everything at once. I didn't have to do it all alone. As I turned away from the window, I smiled softly to myself. Tomorrow would come, just like today had, and the next day after that. And with each one, I would keep learning how to be present, how to be enough, not just for my family, but for myself. And that, I realized, was a journey worth taking.